Assalamu alaikum ji. This is Saad Shahid, and in this video we are going to cover content related to the chemical bonding. Okay, what is chemical bonding and what are the types of chemical bonding which we have to discuss in terms of 5070 syllabus O levels का और IGCSE के syllabus को mind में रखते हुए we will cover this video. All right, so let's have a look on the screen now कि chemical bonding होती क्या है. So I have mentioned here that chemical bonding is actually a force of attraction. So it's a force of attraction between the atoms which binds them together. What does it mean? For example, if you have hydrogen atom and you have chlorine atom, so these are the two atoms. इनके दरमियान में कोई attractive force develop होएगी, कोई force of attraction develop होएगी जो इन दोनों को आपस में जोड़ देती है. So that is called as a chemical bond. वो जो force होती है, that is chemical force, which is known as chemical bond. So the force of attraction between the atoms, which binds them together, this is called a chemical bond. So we have different types of chemical bonding in our syllabus: ionic bonding, covalent bonding, and metallic bonding. But one thing we have to remember, कि covalent bonding, there are two different types of covalent bonding as well. Simple covalent bonding होती है और joint covalent bonding होती है. So we will discuss both the types of covalent bonding in this video as well. So let's start ionic bonding. Ionic bonding होती क्या है जी? So ionic bonding, the bond that is formed due to the transferring of electron from one atom to another atom. Beta, why atoms are transferring their electrons? Remember this point, ये जो ionic bonding होती है, it is formed in between the metal atom and non-metal atoms. ठीक है? This is the important point which you have to keep in your mind. The force of attraction in between the metals and the non-metals. Why this is so? Why it is important कि metal हो और non-metal हो? Because we know cations are formed from the metals. बेटा जी कोई भी metal होगी, for example you have sodium. Sodium has tendency to lose an electron. ये metals की property है. Metal will donate their electrons and in this way they will carry a positive charge on it. So इस चीज को हम कहते हैं cation. इस species को हम कहते हैं cation. Similarly, anion is a species that is formed by accepting the electron and it is a property of a non-metal. For example, you have fluorine. Fluorine is a non-metal which is accepting one electron, and after carrying this one electron, the negative charge will appear on this F negative. It becomes fluoride ion. So we have already discussed the ions in our previous videos. तो बेटा ये जो ions बने हैं, this is the positive ion sodium and this is the negative ion, that is fluoride ion. So they will attract towards each other. उस force को हम कहते हैं attractive force. This force is called as electrostatic force of attraction. ठीक है? Electrostatic force of attraction will develop in between these two oppositely charged ions. ठीक है? So as you can see here, I have mentioned this thing here, that metals lose electron to form a positive ion, as we discussed in an example of sodium. Non-metal gains electron to form a negative ion, as fluorine has gained one electron and it is converted into a negative ion. So after that, what is happening here? इन दोनों के दरमियान में attractive force develop हो रही है. As you can see here, I have mentioned here, ions produced are the oppositely charged and unlike charges attract each other's. Unlike charges attract each other, causing them to be held together with a strong force. This strong force is known as electrostatic force of attraction. सो दिस इज द जनरल कॉन्सेप्ट. जब भी आयनिक बॉन्डिंग आपसे पूछा जाए तो यू मस्ट हैव टू रिमेंबर कि एक मेटल होएगी, एक नॉन मेटल होएगी. Metals lose their electrons, non-metals accept that electron. So इस वजह से non-metal will carry a negative charge on it, metal will carry a positive charge on it. Opposite charges attract each other, and in this way जो attractive force develop होएगी, that is the force of attraction, जिसको हम कहते हैं chemical bond. So when the ions are attracted towards each other, oppositely ions are attracted towards each other, that is called as ionic bond. The bond that is formed due to the attractive forces in between the oppositely charged ions. जो ions के दरमियान में force of attraction होएगी, that is ionic bond. Okay, as you can see, sodium has 11 electrons here. In the first shell it has 2 electrons, in the second shell it has 8 electrons, in the third shell it has 1 electron. So this is sodium atom. Metals have tendency to lose an electron, so it is converted into the ion now. 2 and 8, after donating 1 ion, it is carrying this positive charge, as you can see here. Na is converted into cation now, so this is cation. Sodium cation is formed. Similarly, on the other side we have chlorine. Chlorine is having total 17 electrons, means 2, 8 and 7. This is the electronic configuration of chlorine atom. After gaining 1 electron from the sodium atom, यहां से ये electron donate हो रहा है in the chlorine atom. ठीक है, chlorine is accepting that electron, as you can see here. डिफरेंट कलर है, ये सोडियम से इलेक्ट्रॉन आ रहा है. So this electron is coming from the sodium atom and it is converted into chloride ion. So now it converts into an anion. This is anion. So now it has total 18 electrons. बेटा जस्ट हमने क्या करना है, स्ट्रक्चर्स में हमने आउटर मोस्ट शेल को कंप्लीट करना है. ओके, सोडियम that was having 11 electrons. After donating 1 electron, now this becomes the outermost shell, which is having 8 electrons. Chlorine was having 17 electrons. In the outermost shell, it was having 7 electrons. So now it has 8 electrons in the outermost shell. Outermost shell completely filled हो गया. So key point क्या है यहाँ पे, अगर आपको कहा जाता है draw the dot and cross diagram of NaCl. Dot and cross diagram of NaCl. So now let's move to the key points. बेटा एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है सोडियम क्लोराइड की डॉट एंड क्रॉस डायग्राम ड्रॉ करें. सो इन दैट केस व्हाट वी हैव टू डू, रिमेंबर आपने जस्ट सोडियम आयन का स्ट्रक्चर ड्रॉ करना है. सोडियम आयन का, like in the first shell you are having 2 electrons, in the second shell you have 8 electrons. So just हम उसको draw करेंगे. Okay, so in the first shell we have 2 electrons, in the second shell we have 8 electrons, and we will put a positive charge out of the bracket. ठीक है, at the top side. This is sodium ion. just sodium ion का आपने यहां पे dot and cross diagram बना देनी है with the square brackets. Similarly for the chloride ion, in the chloride ion we will have how many electrons? Total 18. So वो 18 electrons को हम cross से draw कर देंगे. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 हो गए. And in the last shell we will mention further 7 electrons. 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7. ठीक है, now you can see कि यहां पे 8 इलेक्ट्रॉन की डेफिशिएंसी है. So that's why क्लोरीन का एटम एक इलेक्ट्रॉन गेन कर रहा है from the sodium atom और यहां पे मैंने एक डॉट ड्रॉ कर दिया. So this becomes a dot and cross diagram of sodium chloride, and we will mention a negative charge out of this bracket. This is the negative charge. क्यों हम ये चार्जेस ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं? क्योंकि हमने ड्रॉ करना है आयोनिक बॉन्ड, आयोनिक कंपाउंड का स्ट्रक्चर ड्रॉ करना है. सो दिस इज द डॉट एंड क्रॉस डायग्राम ऑफ NaCl. All right. So let's have a look on another example, formation of magnesium chloride. As you can see, there are 12 electrons in this structure. तो ये structure किसका है? So this is magnesium beta. Magnesium has 2 electrons in the outermost shell. This is one, this is the second one. ठीक है? So ये अपने 2 electrons को donate करना चाहता है, and we have chlorine atom. देखो MgCl2 का structure draw करना है, तो 1 magnesium is needed for this, 2 chlorine atoms are needed for this. So that's why we have to mention the 2 structures of chlorine atom. So एक electron magnesium का will move to this chlorine atom, and the second electron of magnesium will move to this chlorine atom. So this is the concept for making the dot and cross diagram of magnesium chloride. So now you can see magnesium has donated 2 electrons and it is converted into its ionic state. So now magnesium is carrying 2 positive charge. जितने electrons donate करता है उतना positive charge उस पे आ जाएगा. This is the electron that is coming from the chlorine, from the magnesium atom. So chlorine has gained 1 electron, so that's why it will carry -1 charge on it. This is the second chlorine atom, और chlorine atom ने एक electron को gain किया. Now it converted into chloride ion, जिसकी electronic configuration है 2, 8 and 8. So this is the dot and cross diagram of magnesium chloride. So now you can see I have mentioned the key points here. एक बॉक्स आपको नजर आ रहा है, तो यहां पे जो की पॉइंट्स हैं we'll discuss these key points after discussing the characteristic properties of ionic compounds. So for this, remember only 3 points: MSC, M, S, C. And for the melting point, S for the solubility, C for the conductivity. But the ionic compounds have very high melting and boiling point. They have high melting point and boiling point. Important point है. Exam में question पूछा जाता है for the 3 marks. For 3 marks, examiner can ask कि कोई भी आयनिक कंपाउंड दे दिया. फॉर एग्जांपल वी जस्ट डिस्कस मैग्नीशियम क्लोराइड, तो उन्होंने कह दिया मैग्नीशियम ऑक्साइड. मैग्नीशियम ऑक्साइड हैज वेरी हाई मेल्टिंग एंड बॉइलिंग पॉइंट. व्हाई दिस इज सो? सो इफ द क्वेश्चन इज ऑफ 3 मार्क्स, सो बेटा जी फर्स्ट मार्क आपको मिलेगा फॉर एक्सप्लेनिंग द स्ट्रक्चर. जितने भी आयनिक कंपाउंड्स होते हैं, for this you have to mention the structure. They have ionic lattice, giant ionic lattice. It has giant ionic lattice. Second point, इनमें bonding कौन सी है? On the basis of structure and on the basis of bonding, you have to explain why this compound has high melting and boiling point. So giant ionic lattice है. Second point, strong bonding है. कौन सी bonding है? This is what you have to specify. Strong ionic bonding है. Strong electrostatic force of attraction है. So I will suggest you to mention this point, electrostatic force of attraction between. It is important to highlight this point. Strong force of attraction किन के दरमियान में है? Between oppositely charged ions. अगर क्वेश्चन था मैग्नीशियम ऑक्साइड से रेलेवेंट, so we have to mention between magnesium ion and oxide ion. 2 marks मिल जाएंगे for these 2 key points. And for the third mark we have to mention the energy needed for this. बेटा जी अगर strong bonding है, giant ionic lattice है, so it needs more energy. High amount of energy is required. High amount of energy is required to break these bonds. ठीक है, ये 3 की पॉइंट्स हैं. अगर ये 3 की पॉइंट्स लिखते हो तो इन दैट केस एग्जामिनर कैन गिव यू एनी मार्क. ठीक है, आपको 3 मार्क्स मिलेंगे, अदरवाइज यू विल नॉट गेट 3 मार्क्स. सो हाई मेल्टिंग एंड बॉइलिंग पॉइंट के लिए these are the 3 points which you have to keep in your mind. All right. Second is solubility. Solubility को हम डिस्कस करेंगे salts में भी. For now, just remember most of the ionic compounds are soluble into the water. Most of the ionic compounds are soluble in water. Most of this ionic compounds, not all the ionic compounds. There are some ionic compounds which are insoluble. बेटा याद रखें, जितने भी salts हैं, they all are ionic compounds. Remember, silver chloride, all chlorides are soluble except silver chloride and lead chloride. All sulfates are soluble except lead sulfate, barium sulfate and calcium sulfate, which is very slightly soluble, but हम consider करते हैं insoluble sulfates में. This is the content you have to remember for O levels and IGCSE syllabus. Most of the ionic compounds are soluble in the water, not all the ionic compounds. And all the carbonates वाले जो compounds होते हैं जिनके लास्ट में carbonate आ जाए, remember this, all carbonates are insoluble except group 1 and ammonium. Sodium carbonate is soluble क्योंकि sodium carbonate group 1 का member है. ठीक है, potassium carbonate is soluble, लेकिन group 2 के जितने भी carbonates हैं they all are insoluble. Magnesium carbonate, calcium carbonate, they are insoluble. ठीक है, zinc carbonate, it is insoluble. Copper carbonate, it is insoluble. So solubility के लिए point याद रखें, most of the ionic compounds are soluble in the water. Last point, conductivity, very important past paper question as well. Ionic compounds, good conductors are good conductors. लेकिन किस form में? Only in the aqueous form or in the molten form. Ionic compounds are good conductor in aqueous form or molten form. बेटा ये जो aqueous है इसको हम कहते हैं solution state. और ये जो L लिखा हुआ है, this is liquid, it means molten. So ionic compounds are good conductors when they are present in the solution state or in the form of molten state, because they are having free ions. In this case they have free ions. Free ions है तो it means these ions can move. When the ions can move, they can conduct electricity. Otherwise, in the case of solid, they cannot conduct electricity. Cannot conduct electricity. और ये कब होगा बेटा? When they exist in the solid state. और यही क्वेश्चंस पूछे जाते हैं बेटा कि क्यों सॉलिड स्टेट में आयनिक कंपाउंड्स कंडक्ट नहीं कर सकते इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. रिमेंबर दिस पॉइंट, बिकॉज आयन्स आर नॉट फ्री, आयन्स आर टाइटली पैक्ड, सो दैट इज द रीजन कि दे कैन नॉट मूव. सो हम क्या पॉइंट लिखेंगे? आयन्स आर tightly packed in its lattice. So that's why there are no free ions which can move. No free ions. So these are the past paper questions जो कि characteristic properties में से पूछे जा सकते हैं ionic compound की. So with this we completed ionic bonding. So let's have a look on some past paper questions.